Welcome back to the Laura Coates Show. Here's your host, Laura Coates.
Hey, welcome back to the Laura Coates Show here on SiriusXM POTUS. I'm glad that you're here on this Wednesday morning. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to the issues of AI, a topic that we have really been focusing on as well throughout the course of not only the campaign, but beyond. Well, our next guest has been thinking about it a great deal. Chris McKenzie, Senior Director of Communications for Americans for Responsible Innovation, a new group advocating for AI policy in the public interest. McKenzie has spent the past 6 years working at the intersection of government and advanced technologies. Previously, he led communications operations for 3 different members of Congress. Chris McKenzie joins us now. Good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Laura. Good to be with you today. I'm good.
Well, let's first talk about this idea of responsible innovation. That is the phrase I often hear in connection or ethics when it comes to AI. And while people look at in the postmortem of an election to what extent AI played a role, having a more expanded notion of what AI means at the intersection of the economy, I think, is a really, really interesting concept. Talk to me first about Americans for Responsible Innovation, why this group has been formed, and what you hope to do with it.
Sure. Americans for Responsible Innovation is a group advocating for AI policy in the public interest. We don't accept money from corporations. We are focused on supporting an AI policy that balances the opportunities that AI presents and recognizes the risks that AI also poses on a number of issues, including our national security, safety, and issues like workforce displacement.
So when we look at workforce displacement in particular, AI, we saw with the strikes in the Hollywood space, having a very impactful role. How about in the non-Hollywood space as well? What is the implication of the future of jobs with AI?
Well, studies suggest that up to 30% of U.S. jobs could be heavily impacted by AI and automation in some capacity. Over the next decade. And of course, not all of those 30% of jobs are going to evaporate. Some of them are going to be enabled by AI. Some jobs, you're going to see some tasks taken over by AI. But at the end of the day, what research shows is we do expect to see an additional 12 million occupational transitions by 2030. So over the next 6 years, due to AI and automation. That's 12 million people who are going to need to seek new work, either in a different field or in a different position because of the implementation of AI and automation.
So are there particular sectors where we see this mostly? I know the longshoremen strike earlier this year might not be the last of the AI impacted industries.
Yeah, that's an interesting, you've brought up a couple of strikes now, both the SAG-AFTRA strike and the International Longshoremen's Association strike. We also have seen truck drivers striking against autonomous trucking. I think one of the reasons we've seen those strikes, one of the reasons those strikes have broken news are a couple of reasons. Number one, because those jobs integrate with AI very easily. And number two, because those jobs are heavily unionized, which means that there's been some worker resistance to AI implementation in those fields. In other fields that are less heavily unionized, we might not hear about those making news when there are layoffs, but that does exist. We're actually seeing AI is going to be implemented probably across fields, and not just for low wage jobs, but for middle income earners and for high earners as well.
It might strike people as this balance that has to be struck. We as a nation, frankly, a society and a globe want innovation, but not necessarily anticipating the perils that it will bring. And people will say, well, change is inevitable. Change is inevitable. Change is going to happen. But what could the politics be like? Is there a way to navigate this Congress is not necessarily known for keeping abreast of all of the issues in real time in the sense of being able to get ahead of innovation. How does that impact the conversation?
Sure. I think it's worth comparing this moment in time, this economic transition, to a previous moment in history where Congress and the government actually help to navigate that economic transition successfully. What I'm talking about there is the post-World War II economic transition, where we saw over 10 million American soldiers come home and need to seek new employment in the civilian workforce. Of course, then what Congress did was implement the GI Bill to help retrain soldiers to give them new opportunities in the civilian workforce. We're going to need to think big on that scale, on the GI Bill scale, in order to create enough new jobs and offer enough new employment opportunities for the workers displaced by AI. A few of the areas we'd like to see Congress focus when they think about this workforce transition. One, as I said, is retraining and education programs. Two is just creating more jobs, right? One of the issues that we'll have with AI is a number of jobs being eliminated as they are replaced or automated, and simply having more jobs in the economy available to absorb those workers who find themselves displaced is important. And then number three, we need to think about how to stop worker exploitation and current harms being perpetrated against workers because of AI. AI is being used by some companies in an invasive way that harms the privacy of workers, monitors their keystrokes and their movements at work in a really exploitative way. And so Congress should be conscious of that as well.
Well, let's talk about that latter for a moment that you spoke about, the last of them. There are those who would say as an employer and say, hold on a second, like I want to monitor keystrokes because I want to make sure that there is efficiency. We have this new Doge, department as well, for example, or, hey, I'm monitoring your phone use and using AI if you are a driver because I want to make sure that you're not doing anything that might endanger the public. They're going to offer a whole series of reasonable reasons, whether you agree with them or not. They will say they're reasonable, of why they think AI is helpful, maybe not to the individual employee, but to society at large. How do you respond to that when the company says these are actually in the best interest, one, of our wallet, and two, of the public?
Sure. I think that they also have to balance their workplace culture and their workers' needs. While some of the workers who are being monitored closely are low wage, that's what we have elected lawmakers for, to speak up on behalf of those people who might not be unionized, who might not have a voice at their corporation's board table, but who need someone looking out for their privacy as well. Workers have a reasonable expectation of some amount of privacy when they work for a corporation, regardless of, that corporation's profit motives.
Well, what about, it might seem counterintuitive. If AI is being used to try to streamline a workforce, why would job creation be an incentive for corporate America?
So AI is going to be used not only to replace some jobs, but it's also going to be an enabling technology. We expect to see AI used in ways that we cannot anticipate yet to create new jobs that we did not previously know we needed. If you think about previous technology, innovations, whether that's the steam engine or the computer, a lot of jobs that followed on those technologies we couldn't have imagined needing before the invention of those technologies. So we expect AI to be a mixed bag of replacing technology and an enabling technology that creates new work as well.
Really fascinating to think. Now, what's the appetite that you have found? We have about a minute or so left. But what is the appetite that you have found for legislators to be on board with this?
What you bring up is interesting. We have polling that looks at Americans' public attitudes toward AI and the workforce. About 44% of Americans say their job probably won't be impacted by AI, but another 40% of Americans are either worried that AI will eliminate their job or concerned that AI will impact their job in another way. So the public is really split on this issue. In Congress, we see a lot of bipartisan work that's forward-looking, looking at how do we tackle this issue of AI in the workforce. I would compare it to social media, where Congress was kind of caught off guard and was inactive for a number of years as this new technology became more pervasive in our society. Congress has really gotten off to a rocking start after ChatGPT was introduced only a couple years ago. So we do expect to see legislation on this.
It's fascinating to think of how all this will unfold. And of course, I wonder to what extent those who believe their jobs are not going to be impacted by AI have no idea whether it really will be in the end. This was really interesting to hear your perspective. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you, Laura, for bringing me on.
Chris McKenzie, everyone, Senior Director of Communications for Americans for Responsible Innovation.